From the Chesapeake Bay Journal, your source for independent environmental reporting, this is Chesapeake Uncharted, the podcast that uncovers stories about the Bay, its interconnected ecosystem, and the people who rely on them. I'm Jeremy Cox. On today's episode...
I just prayed I'd get out of this place.
What do you mean get out of this place?
Because
Live that day?
Lived to go home to see my family because there was no way to get out.
Brenda Franz will be the first to tell you she's lucky to be alive.
And now I'm here to talk about it.
Harrowing is the only word that can describe Franz's experience on May 27th, 2018. With virtually no warning, the skies opened up above Ellicott City, Maryland, an old mill town about 12 miles west of Baltimore. Franz owns an antique store on Main Street in the community's historic downtown. Beginning shortly after 3 p.m., it rained, hard, almost without let-up, for a solid 2 hours. Video footage from that day shows water trickling along Main Street's curbs at 4 p.m. By 4:20, the water had risen dramatically, but Main Street was still passable. A mere 20 minutes later, that was no longer the case. Franz had long since shooed away her last customers of the day, but she decided to stay behind. A decision she would quickly regret.
And I was running around with plastic bins because I could see the water coming in my basement through floorboards and my door blew open, the flood blew in here, and there's nothing I could do. I couldn't save myself, I couldn't save my store.
Biblical is the only word that can describe the scene unfolding outside her door. A reddish-brown wall of water, 6 to 8 feet deep, gushing down Main Street, destroying anything in its path. The door on the rear side of her building was no match for nature's fury.
It blew wide open.
When the water finally receded, more than 200 buildings had been damaged. The worst hit area was in the old town of Ellicott City, where Franz had weathered the storm. Several buildings that had survived 200 years or more were destroyed by the flood. One person, a 39-year-old man, was swept away by the rushing waters and later found dead. Franz had only one way to escape: go up.
I was able to go up to the third story of my building in the back, climb out on the flat roof.
Firefighters showed up with a 70-foot ladder truck,
which would not reach my building because my building was just not quite long enough, but it would reach to the next building, which is right there to our left, and I had to climb up onto the peaked roof, with no shoes on, and scared to death, and don't like heights or water.
She was greeted at the end of the ladder by a firefighter. Then there was just one more obstacle to overcome: fear.
And the fireman said, "You're going to make it. Trust us. You are going to be safe. You're going to get in that ladder, and you're going to go down, and you'll be on land. Not dry land, but you'll at least be on land." So that's what happened to me.
Because of the amount of rain and how quickly it fell, meteorologists dubbed the event in Ellicott City that day a 1,000-year storm, meaning a storm of that strength would typically occur only once in a millennium. But the label was less than reassuring because it had all happened less than 2 years earlier, too. Yes, another so-called 1,000-year flood. So when the second flood came, there must have been a sense of not again.
Yeah. Nobody could believe it because we were told by the county and various weather people, and you heard it on the news, it's a 100-year flood. In some cases, they even said it's a 1,000-year flood. Nobody could have believed it. And to this day, we still don't believe it. How could this happen to this town in less than 2 years?
At the Chesapeake Bay Journal, I work with Laura Lutz, our editor, and Carl Blankenship, our editor-at-large, to start planning this podcast. We wanted to tackle a different theme each season, and it didn't take long to decide what to delve into first: climate change. That's because it's already happening, and not just at the North Pole and Antarctica. We're talking about right here in the Chesapeake Bay region. With each episode, we're taking a close look at one slice of this new reality. Think of it as a snapshot in time, before things get worse, when we as a society can maybe still change the future. Today, we'll search for answers to Franz's question: how could it happen? 2 devastating floods within 2 years, and we'll unpack the plan to save Ellicott City from future flooding. Will it work, or is it too little, too late? That right after this quick break.
Chesapeake Uncharted is brought to you in part by Greenfin Studio, offering marketing and communications services for a greener world. Their team combines strategy, creativity, and scientific insight, setting them apart when conservation, sustainability, and scientific organizations need help telling their stories. See what they can do for you at greenfinstudio.com.
Welcome back to Chesapeake Uncharted. On today's show, we're exploring one city's confrontation with the unfathomable. Did climate change play a role in the back-to-back 1,000-year storms that struck Ellicott City, Maryland? And if the answer is yes, is this the new normal? It's fall in 2020, the kind of Saturday afternoon that makes living in the mid-Atlantic worthwhile. Sunny, cool, comfortable. The waning light of summer casts long shadows, even though it's barely past noon. As if by clockwork, traffic is backed up for several blocks on Main Street in Ellicott City. Art galleries and antique shops are doing steady business. There's a global pandemic going on that you might have heard about, so huge white tents have sprung up to house outdoor diners, and face masks are still a thing. If you're like me and you hadn't visited Ellicott before the floods, the town looks pretty normal. Maybe a few more empty storefronts than you'd expect, but if you didn't know any better, you might just chalk that up to the COVID-19 lockdowns. I've been doing some recording at a tree planting in Frederick County, which you'll hear about on a later episode. I brought my 10-year-old daughter, Charlie, too. Kind of an outdoor classroom experience for her. On our way back, I felt drawn by the beautiful weather to make a stop at Ellicott City. We parked and walked against the flow of traffic toward the residential portion, known as the West End. That's where we met Tammy Gamble, and the town's veneer of normalcy began to slip.
Sorry. I'm working on a podcast for the Chesapeake Bay Journal. We're a nonprofit. I don't know if you were affected by the flooding, but I wonder if you might, while you work, have a second 5 minutes to talk to me about it.
Sure.
This is what passes for high ground in Ellicott City. From here, it's still another 3/4 of a mile to the bottom of town, all downhill. Gamble was outside doing yard work with her 2 grandsons when we interrupted her. She was raised literally right here, she tells Charlie and I.
So I grew up in this house, and then we moved to the next one over, and now I live in this house.
It's a white clapboard house, partitioned into row houses. Gamble had seen flooding here before, many times in fact, but nothing like what she saw on July 30th, 2016.
What'd you see?
Well, the water was up in this yard.
And we're well above the road here by 5 or 6 feet.
Yeah, it was a wave that came all the way up and shot under the porches.
From 6:45 to 8:30 that night, it poured. In a span of about 90 minutes, 6 inches of rain came down.
So we seen it starting to get in the road, so we started getting ready to come move the cars, and then it just came out of nowhere. I mean, within 30 minutes, that rain took out this whole area.
You didn't even have time to move the cars?
Well, I got in mind to move it, but I started floating, so I got out and let it go.
Good call.
Yeah.
In 2018, Gamble went through it all over again. Neither storm managed to push water up into her house, but both times, the surging floodwater lifted her 1987 Chevy pickup and deposited it in a pile of debris about 50 yards away. By some miracle, she was able to get it fixed both times.
The metal bodies, they're the best.
My daughter Charlie's been listening to us this whole time, and you can see from the anxious look on her face, there's a question just dying to get out. And her question gets to the heart of what this story is all about.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead and talk.
So Do you think another one is coming soon, or do you think it's going to take a longer time before another one comes?
I'm not going to say a long time because we only had 2 years in between the other ones, so I can't give you a promising answer to that.
Ellicott City built back at no small expense after both the 2016 and 2018 floods. Can it withstand another so-called 1,000-year storm? I talked to several experts, and what I heard over and over again was that the city historically has had a love-hate relationship with water.
My name is Astrid Caldas. I am a senior climate scientist at the Union of Concerned Scientists. I work out of the office in Washington, D.C.
From Washington, D.C., Ellicott City is maybe a 45-minute drive, so Caldas has made that trip herself many times. She was familiar with the town then before it made national news. The town's location made it an ideal site in the late 1700s, she says, to power the first wave of America's Industrial Revolution.
Looking at the geography, the topography of that area, which was the reason why Ellicott City was built there in the first place, because of the mill and everything. They needed the water, the speed of the water from the river.
Grist mills, flour mills, sawmills. By the early 1800s, Ellicott's waterfront was teeming with industry. As I said earlier, this is a Chesapeake Bay Journal podcast, so you'll get to hear from our knowledgeable team of reporters and editors throughout the series. First up,
I'm Tim Wheeler. I'm associate editor and senior writer for the Bay Journal. I've been covering the environment for more than 3 decades. Yeah.
Wheeler is acquainted with Ellicott's flooding, both professionally and personally.
I happen to live in Catonsville, which is just like 5 minutes drive from old Ellicott City, where the floods occurred. It was a sort of a backyard experience.
With the localized nature of the rains, the flooding wasn't too bad at his place in 2016, but 2018 was a different story.
That one actually hit home, not just close to home. I got a foot of water in my own basement, and we're on the heights above Ellicott City.
Flooding has been part of life in Ellicott City from the start. These are just the years when you'd call the flooding major. 1817, 1868, 1807, 1817, 1923, 1838, 1942, 1952, 1956, 1972, 1975, 1989, 2011, 2016, and 2018. To understand why flooding is so frequent, just look at the local topography.
It happens to be at a sort of a confluence of streams, the Tiber-Hudson watershed coming out of Howard County, and then the Patapsco River, which drains all the way from Carroll County on the northwest outskirts of the Baltimore metro region down through the suburbs of Baltimore and Baltimore County, past my home here in Catonsville, and all the way into the harbor in the city.
So you have the Patapsco River on the far east end of town, which can overflow its banks. And then you have 3 tributaries, the Hudson, Tiber, and Newcut branches, that all meet right in the middle of the Old Town, just above the Patapsco. The drainage area, or watershed, spans nearly 4 square miles. Now, every drop of rain that bowl catches can only go one of 2 ways. Let's take those 2 destinations in turn, and you'll see that the odds are stacked against Ellicott City staying dry. First, the water could seep into the ground. That's all well and good, but
this is a pretty small watershed, and it's 2/3 of it is developed. Howard County is, a bedroom community both for Baltimore and Washington, D.C.
And about 30% of the drainage area can't drain anything at all because it's blocked by roads, buildings, and other hard surfaces, what are known as impervious cover. So, if that water can't percolate into the ground, there's just one other option. It becomes floodwater. It washes off parking lots and streets and roofs and into either the Hudson, Tiber, or Newcut streams. Remember now, all 3 come together in the Old Town. So what you end up with is
a very steep ravine with rocky cliffs on either side. It's kind of like you're asking for a perfect little channel to run water down.
On Main Street, down, down, down you go to the Patapsco, with the 3 stream branches crisscrossing and fusing together along the way. Here, the streams are maybe 10 or so feet wide. The banks are set at 90 degrees and usually concrete. The difference between the watershed's highest and lowest points is a vertical 300 feet. So those former raindrops, they can pick up some serious speed by the time they've reached the bottom of the slide. To get some perspective on the 2016 and 2018 floods, I reached out to Mark DeLuca, Deputy Director of Public Works and Chief of Environmental Services in Howard County. Ellicott City isn't incorporated, so the county oversees its stormwater system. We met up a few months after my trip with Charlie. Appropriately enough, a light rain was falling. Knowing what I knew about Ellicott City, I felt a little uneasy to be there in a rain of any sort, but DeLuca wasn't bothered.
Well, I don't find anything wrong with rain like this. It's just a gentle rain, and it's what all the plants need. So,
umbrellas in hand, we started strolling down Main Street. We passed quaint storefronts and expanding puddles. By now, in 2021, things have largely been put back into order in downtown Ellicott. So DeLuca reminds me of what it looked like barely 3 years earlier.
Well, why do you want to meet down here? What are we looking at?
So what we have down here in Lot F was this probably during the 2018 storm was where the most visible damage was. This tributary, the Hudson Branch, was inundated with water. Its base flow is less than 20 feet per second. We could take a look at that. You can see, even in this rain, it's not very much. However, during the storms, it exceeded 2,000. And what had happened we're on the downstream side of a culvert that blew out. The embankment is actually a road, Ellicott Mills Drive, and it was probably one of the most photographed areas of damage in Ellicott City back in 2018. So all of this was gone.
Now the culvert has been rebuilt and enlarged, but the opening is constricted on purpose.
To carry a 100-year storm would inundate this area in through here.
Only when more work is done farther downstream can the culvert be allowed to truly reach its full water shunting potential, he tells me. Let's pause here for a moment. I keep hearing these terms, 100-year storm, 1,000-year storm. What does it mean when people say Ellicott City was struck by 1,000-year storms, twice, in 2 years? If they're 1,000-year storms, aren't they only supposed to come around every 1,000 years? The short answer is no. For a longer answer, here's Caldas again.
When you talk about 100-year storm, the year part comes from the probability, and that probability is based in past history of climatic events.
I'm just going to jump in here and really underline that past history part, because what we consider a 100 or 1,000-year storm is probably changing because extreme rainfalls are happening more regularly. Okay, back to Caldas.
So when you say 100-year storm, you say that that type of storm has a 1% chance or a 1 in 100 chance of occurring in any given year.
And a 1,000-year storm has a 1 in 1,000 chance, or 0.1%.
But there is a chance. So it can happen year after year, and even twice in the same year.
It's confusing. You can see why our shop owner at the top of the podcast, Brenda Franz, and so many others in Ellicott City were lulled into a false sense of safety after the 2016 flood. It follows then, my colleague Wheeler says, that experiencing 1,000-year storms, even if they pop up less than 2 years apart, confers no protection against future storms of the same strength.
The storms are going to happen again. I mean, for the near future, at least anyway, because we're not going to be turning around the climate change that's already occurring overnight, if we do it at all. So the issue then is, how do you make Old Ellicott City safe for people to continue to operate there, for businesses to stay, and how do you minimize the damage?
Future-proofing Ellicott City. We'll talk about that right after this break.
Hi, this is Laura Lutz, editor at the Chesapeake Bay Journal. I hope you're enjoying our podcast, and I'd like to invite you to join the community of Bay Journal readers. If you care about climate change, wildlife, clean air, healthy communities, and of course the Bay and its rivers, you'll find news you can use at the Bay Journal. along with some great ideas for outdoor travel. Our subscriptions are free. Check us out at bayjournal.com and click on subscribe to start receiving the best independent environmental news in the Bay region.
Hello again. On this episode of Chesapeake Uncharted, we're taking a deep dive into the flood of problems in Ellicott City, Maryland. After a pair of 1,000-year storms, a community that's accustomed to flooding is now embarking on its biggest effort yet to keep it from happening again. So far, DeLuca explains to me, the county's largely only been able to install quick fixes, video cameras to track rising water levels, an emergency siren to warn of flash flooding, gates at the bottom of the hill that can be unlocked to allow pedestrians to access stairs in case there's no other escape.
They're controlled when the water level, there's a sensor for the water level that will unlock the gate. And then also we have a button back at the EOC that's monitoring them. And we have cameras set up so we can see the situation. And we can push the button and that'll unlock the gates as well.
The first elements of the Big Fix, dubbed the Safe and Sound Plan by County Executive Calvin Ball, are just beginning to go into the ground in the summer of 2021. The plan calls for spending up to $140 million over 5 years on multiple projects sprinkled in and around the Old Town. The first part of the plan is to increase the amount of storage space for stormwater above the Old Town. The idea is to capture it in 4 new shallow pits and expand an existing one. But those won't be enough to save Ellicott, says Lori Lilly. She's the executive director of Howard EcoWorks, a local environmental nonprofit.
There's still too much water, and the water can't get out of the town because it's constricted at the bottom.
The plan also includes a series of new culverts at the bottom of Old Town to remove that constriction. But the element that gets the most attention is a nearly 1-mile-long tunnel up to 18 inches in diameter, buried beneath the north side of Main Street. Instead of ripping through the Old Town, floodwaters from the Hudson branch will bypass the area altogether. Again, Tim Wheeler.
They're going to run that through bedrock down to the river. So the idea is to divert some of that. That way we'll reduce the depth of the water and reduce the ferocity of the flow.
Construction on the tunnel is expected to start in 2022, but not everyone is happy about it, Lori Lilly being one of them.
If there's a microburst over one part of this extremely small watershed, the tunnel might be able to get that water out of town, but if the microburst is in a different part of the watershed, like it was in 2018, and hit the New Cut sub-watershed, then it might not be as effective. So the cost of the tunnel, which might address the intensity of storm in one type of event, might not be as effective within another type of event.
What she recommends is a plan that evolves over time as the impacts of climate change become clearer. As you probably deduced by now, the floods of 2016 and 2018, they were symptoms of climate change. Every expert I talked to agreed on this point. Let's hear again from Astrid Caldas with the Union of Concerned Scientists.
Extreme precipitation is increasing not only in frequency, but in intensity.
Yeah, it's happening now.
We are already 1 degree centigrade, about 1.8 Fahrenheit warmer globally, right? That amount varies from place to place. But overall, what we know is that with each degree centigrade of warming, the atmosphere can hold about 7% more water vapor.
And more water vapor means more precipitation, with either snow or rainfall. To be sure, it's hard to say that climate change causes any specific weather event, but it can certainly affect the likelihood, experts say. Since the 1950s, the frequency of heavy precipitation, defined as the top 1% of all events, has gone up 71% in the northeastern United States, according to the National Climate Assessment. If greenhouse gas emissions continue increasing, the report suggests that by the end of this century, those heavy downpours will happen 300 or 400% more often. Back in Ellicott City, you hear a lot of talk about resilience, a term many vulnerable communities have adopted to describe how they're fighting climate change. It certainly came up on my walk with Mark DeLuca.
To make this community resilient, we're trying to put these measures into place. And overall, it just goes with a goal of trying to make the communities livable. And this is the way that this community will be able to survive.
The trickiest part of the planning process, though, has been striking the right balance between flood protection and preserving the community's history, by which I mean the physical buildings that lend Ellicott City so much of its unique character. After the 2016 flood, the county executive at the time proposed demolishing 10 structures along the lower end of Main Street to provide space for more floodwater to collect. To many in the community, that was a non-starter.
We felt like it was setting not only statewide but national precedents about if there's an issue with a large flood and then the reaction is to knock over the historic community. We saw that as something that we had to push back against and come up with a compromise.
Nicholas Redding is president and CEO of Preservation Maryland, a group that strives to save historic places in the state. The organization led the push to get the county to back off. Under Calvin Ball's administration, the plan was tweaked, and now only 4 buildings are set to be torn down, and more are being preserved on the west end. Since the waters began to recede after the 2016 flood, every decision about Ellicott City's future has sprung from the same assumption, that Ellicott has a future, even in a climate-changed world. I called County Executive Ball, and those were almost his words exactly.
As we are seeing increased intensity and frequency of storms throughout not just Howard County, the state, the nation, but the world, we want to make sure that we are that example for, like you said, addressing climate change.
So it's too important to let climate change win on this one, then?
Not just for Ellicott City, but frankly for the world.
Those are some big stakes. As long as we're talking about the world, it bears asking, is it really in society's best interest to save every place that faces threats from climate change?
There's going to be more and more of these cases. You can't throw $180 million at each one of them. But nobody wants to be the first one to say, well, maybe we should move. Because that's, right? That's such a fraught thing to say.
Sarah Vaya is a climate extension specialist for the University of Maryland. For decades, university extension programs have been dispensing essential agricultural information to farmers to support their livelihoods. Now, many are jumping into the climate game. In some communities, and perhaps this one, Vaya says, the best course of action is to strategically walk away, or, as many people call it, managed retreat. In some places, it's already happening. The city of Houston, for example, offered support to homeowners trying to relocate after Hurricane Harvey. Right here in the Chesapeake watershed, 2 communities in the Hampton Roads region of southeastern Virginia are experimenting with different avenues of retreat. In the city of Chesapeake, officials are using money from the Federal Emergency Management Agency to buy at-risk structures and return them to open space. In Norfolk, the city recently changed its zoning laws to make it harder to build in high-risk flood zones. But stopping development doesn't seem to be on the menu in Ellicott City, Wheeler told me.
They've debated about that. There was a pause, a moratorium for a while they looked at what to do about development. They ultimately decided to let it go ahead with some additional limitations on requirements to build in to capture runoff. But the development has not been stopped, and that's, for some people, that's a sore subject.
As Vaya sees it, it's a missed opportunity.
So a place like Ellicott City, then, is a real test of not just can we do it, but should we do it?
I think so. But I have not heard very many conversations along that line. I live in Howard County, right? I have not heard very many conversations along that line. The suggestion comes up, well, maybe we should relocate the businesses, and there's just a hue and cry, just a sort of general freak out about it. And, that's okay, but I think 10 years down the line, we're going to wish we had that $180 million back.
A county analysis suggests that if the Safe and Sound plan had been in place in 2016, the maximum water depth on Lower Main Street would have been no higher than 3 feet. In the case of the 2018 storm, the water would have been less than 1 foot high. Can Ellicott City really count on being safe and sound in the future? Tammy Gamble, the West End resident who's already fought 2 floods, isn't convinced.
Do you have any opinions about the plans that they've suggested to kind of fix this? Or
They've been band-aiding the problem for years. I have lived here, like I said, since I was in 4th grade, and I've seen multiple floods. Nothing, of course, like the last 2, but I feel they're going to band-aid the problem.
Again?
Again.
Why do you feel that way?
Well, if you're not going to stop the building of homes, you're not going to stop the water from coming downhill.
Thanks to Greenfin Studio, which combines creativity and communication savvy with scientific insight. Visit greenfinstudio.com to see how they can help your organization engage a wider audience. Chesapeake Uncharted is brought to you by the Bay Journal, your source for independent environmental news in the Chesapeake region. Production for this episode was by me, Jeremy Cox. The story was edited by Laura Lutz. Our marketing and advertising director is Jackie Kane. You can find more episodes of Chesapeake Uncharted on your favorite streaming service or at ChesapeakeUncharted.com. If you like what you're hearing, sign up for a free Bay Journal news subscription at BayJournal.com. Until next time, this has been Jeremy Cox. Take care.